What's up, guys? Big D Wiz, oldschoolstereo.com. Today we're going to look at my first receiver, NEC AVR-1000. Back in the day, I was really craving this Sony receiver because of the spectrum analyzer. I really dug the way you could see the little lights jumping here. I think a lot of people in audio kind of like this. The other thing I really liked was a volume knob. I've always been a stickler for a volume knob and didn't like the push button crap. But anyway, back to the receiver I decided to purchase. The NEC AVR-1000, as you can see here, Dolby Surround. This is before ProLogic. This is just a 4-channel receiver, 2 front, 2 rear channels. Now luckily I saved the information about the amplifier after I bought it. So I've got all the paperwork here. You can see purchased in 1989. So let's check it out and see what Big D paid for this joker. So you can see $449.82 is what I paid. This is from a Lechmere or Lechmere, however you say it, that was closing down. So with tax, we paid $482.31. That's a lot of money back in 1989. Now I decided to go with this model over the Sony because it was deeply discounted. It was like 40% off the original retail price, and we'll check that out here in the Audio Magazine Buyer's Guide. And what I didn't know back in the day is this is in a 1987 annual equipment directory. So I'm not sure if it's an 87 or 88 model, but I still bought it in 89, so it was probably a year old when I purchased it. Here are the specs for the AVR-1000. 100 watts or 150 watts per channel at the front, 50 watts for the rear channels. $869 US was the MSRP back then. Big money, big powerful receiver, and I'll show you something that's really cool about it later in the video. Also, something pretty unique about this receiver was this huge remote control that came with it. It was massive, much larger than any other remote control, and it had actually a little LCD display at the top. And it even came with its own manual. That's right, the remote control had its own manual in addition to the receiver. So the only problem was this was not a learning remote control. You had to have NEC compatible components to use it, which was a bummer because I couldn't afford any other NEC components back then. The front of the receiver had a very clean look and had this hidden access panel door that you press on and it drops down, and you can see the additional features here, including tone controls for the front and rear, and also input level adjustments, which is kind of odd. You don't normally see that on a receiver. On the rear panel you can see the analog audio inputs and outputs. In addition, composite video. This is before S-video. Also notice there's no subwoofer output or preamp outputs on this one. And here are the speaker connections, which are very odd. This is a high-end receiver. I would have hoped they would have had bonding posts back then, but not many receivers did. So here's how it connected using these flip-down terminals. As you can see here, made in Japan. That's right, 80s made in Japan electronics. Made very well, obviously. All right, now let's take the screws out. Open this joker up. There's 4 screws on either side and 2 on the back. Then we can just lift the top panel back and up, and we can see the guts of this monster receiver. First thing you'll really notice is those huge heat sinks on the left and the right, not far from the center. Those are for each of the channels, 150 watt by 2 stereo channels at 4 ohms. And also look at all these little daughter boards and all the components and all the wiring that goes in between the components, and yeah, I'd hate to have to troubleshoot something wrong with this joker. But yeah, so here are the insides again. Huge heat sinks on the right. There are massive transformers, and there appears to be 2. I think there's one for the front channels and one for the rear channels as well. Here are the caps, 71 volt, 12,000 microfarad, 85 degrees Celsius. These are the caps that are on the main power board for the front channels. And also there are 2 A1491 bipolar transistors, and also the complementary version, which is the C3855. There's 2 of those also per channel. So 4 total bipolar transistors per channel for the front. The rear channel uses a single chip, the STK4913 stereo amplifier chip. I mentioned earlier the Sony having a real cool spectrum analyzer, but check this out. This is the NEC AVR-1000 spectrum analyzer. It almost looks like it's heavenly. It almost looks like little crosses showing us how much power is going out of the amplifier. I think this is really cool and extremely unique. You do not see this on any other amp. So I'm sure the question remains, why did I decide to go with the NEC instead of the Sony with the volume knob and the real cool spectrum analyzer? Well, it's mainly my brother's suggestion. NEC was a higher end brand back then. They were innovative, they made computers, and this one had a really strong amplifier. And it was also very heavy, and that's a way to determine a lot of cases in audio equipment how well it's built. So that's why I decided to go with this particular model. Alright, your favorite time for the Amp Dyno test. Let's check this joker out, see what it can do. Alright, as usual, what we've done is we've warmed up the amp just playing music through the Amp Dyno, using it as speakers, and we also hooked up a speaker just to kind of listen to the amp to make sure everything sounded fine, and it did. So let's start off with a certified run, 2 channels, and we'll do 8 ohms. And we're going to do track 9, which is the 1 kilohertz track. And this is 1% distortion, so we're looking for what we'd get at 1%. And again, you can disregard the voltage because this is plugged into the outlet in the wall. And it's using the adapter. So 134 watts at 8 ohms, certified at 1% distortion. So there you go. It's rated at 100, does 134. Nice. All right, let's try the fun test. This is the dynamic power run, which this is an IHF202 standard for dynamic power. A lot of people see this test and say this test means nothing. Well, it actually does mean something. It shows the capability of the amplifier to handle dynamic loads. See what the power supply can do as it's pushed. As you can see, quite a bit more power there. It's pretty good. 161 watts per channel. I think that's all we're going to get out of it. But hey, that's pretty good. Let's try the 4 ohm certified run at 1% distortion at 1 kilohertz. So let's see what she'll do. Hopefully we don't blow anything up. Wow, 200 watts, rated at 150 watts, 200, nice, 200 and 194, very good. All right, how about a little dynamic power run at 4 ohms, 2 channels. Let's see what this baby can put out. 1 kilohertz burst. Bam! Look at that. 277 watts. Sweet! That's per channel, so that's over 550 watts. Both channels loaded. Awesome. Alright guys, here we have my old NEC AVR-1000 home theater receiver here on the test bench, hooked up to the Amp Dyno, and we're just going to have a little fun here. I'm going to try the dynamic run. Got both channels hooked up. Let's try the 2.67 ohm load. It's not rated to handle anything under 4 ohms, but the dynamic run is a burst, and it usually doesn't hurt an amp to run a little under what it's rated at. So let's see what we get. Wow! Check that out. 397 watts. Almost 400 watts, that is per channel, my friends, from this NEC AVR-1000 home theater receiver. Sweet! Alright, so we've shown the front channels are impressive. What about the rear channels? This has a 50 watt by 2 rated rear channel amplifier. And yeah, 68 watts per channel. So even the rear channels on this NEC receiver are underrated. But then we couldn't just do an 8 ohm test. We also had to do a 4 ohm test. Not recommended, my friends. Don't do this at home. But this rear channel amp on this NEC receiver is strong, as you're going to see. Look at this. Almost, oh, can't see yet. Check out them lights. Almost 100 watts per channel. 96 watts per channel for the rear. Almost double the rated power. Incredible. Alright guys, so there you have my overview and test of my NEC AVR-1000. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing, commenting, liking my videos, and supporting OSS. Until next time, Big D Wiz. I'm out of here!
See that? Yeah, that's the way to do it. That's old school.
Yeah? No school like the old school.
What's up guys, Big D Wiz, OldSchoolStereo.com. Tonight we have the NEC AVR-1000 surround sound home theater receiver here on the bench. This is my original receiver from 1989. I believe this came out in 1988. It's got a really cool display and I'll show you guys that later. But for right now, we're going to run a quick test on the Amp Dyno. Just for you guys, we're going to try it out. The front channels are rated to handle 4 ohms, but in the dynamic mode, we can usually, take that down a little bit. So we're going to try 2 ohms per channel with the front channels only. And let's do this. This is IHF 202 certified run on the dyno. Whoa, check that out. 437 watts per channel, my friends. This amp is rated at 100 watts per channel into 8 ohms and 150 watts per channel into 4 ohms. Of course, those are with the low THD. But this just gives you an idea of the beefiness of the amp that's built into this NEC AVR receiver. So I just wanted to show you that, guys, this quick test. I am doing a full test of this receiver. I'm going to check the front channels and the rear channels at various ohm loads, and I will load that video up to my channel so you guys can check it out. So if you guys like old home theater gear or old home gear, we're going to test some of that out here in the future as well. So stay tuned. Once again, this is Big D Wiz here with the SMD and Demore Engineering Amp Dyno 81. You guys stay tuned if you want to see more of these. Until next time, I'm out of here.